Okay, so in this video we're going to be discussing the fundamentals of trigonometry, and it's all going to focus around sine, cos and tan. So as you can see, we have three triangles. All of those triangles are exactly the same in terms of angles, but the size of the triangle is totally different. So this one, as you can see, is 3, 4 and 5. This one is 4.5, 6 and 7.5, and we have 6, 8 and 10. But on the inside, the angles, 36.87, 36.87, 36.87, and we have a right angle in the corner. So all these triangles are the exact same in terms of angles. Now, why I've called it ratios is because the ratios of the sides are the exact same regardless of the size of the triangle. So as I've said, these three triangles, they're the exact same size in terms of angles, but the physical size is totally different. As you can see here, because the angles are all the same, the ratio of two sides are always the same also. So if you take this side here 3 and you take this side 4, that's a ratio of 3 to 4. But if you take this one here 6 to 8, that's also 3 to 4. And this one here 4.5 to 6 is also 3 to 4. So the ratio is exactly the same. Okay, now these ratios all link directly to the angle you're talking about. It all concerns the angle that you're discussing. And when we talk about angles in trigonometry, we use three particular ratios. They're called sine, cosine, and tangent. But just for ease, and from now on, they're going to be called sine, cos, and tan. Okay, so this is the official name of the ratios. This is the short name that you will see a lot more common. If you look at your calculator, it will say sine, cos and tan. It won't say sine, cosine and tangent. So if you see sine, this is what they mean. If they see tangent and an angle, this is what they're talking about. So that's more or less it. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got a triangle from the section above, and I'm going to use that to explain the next part of the video. Now, the most important part of this triangle is this section here. And that symbol lets us know that this triangle is a right angled triangle. Now, anytime you're given a right angled triangle, the most important thing that I would always find at the very, very start is the side that is directly across from the right angle. And this side is called the hypotenuse. Okay, so now we've got the hypotenuse sorted. That will never change. The side across from the right angle is always called the hypotenuse. Now, the other two sides depend on where your angle is. Now, this is the angle we're going to be discussing, so that's our focus for now. As you can see, this angle has a side here and a side here. They're the only two that we haven't named. Now, this side over here is opposite the angle. So we're going to call that side the opposite. Okay, so now we've got our hypotenuse and we've got our opposite. And the last side, this side here, is right next to the angle. So that angle is what's called the adjacent. So now we've got our hypotenuse, we've got our opposite side, and we've got our adjacent side. So to link back to the angles that we had written above, we had sine, we had cos, and we had tan. Now the symbol I'm going to use to represent the angle is always associated with angles. The same way x is associated with algebra, this symbol, it's called theta, is associated with angles. It's not the only one. You will meet more as we go through the video, but this is just the most common one that we're going to use. So we've sine theta, cos theta, and tan theta. So the next thing I'm going to show is the relation that sine has and what side sine connects to. So sine is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. So that's our ratio. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cos is going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the last one, tan, is the opposite over the adjacent. So if I'm talking about this angle here, this corner, sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, which is 3 over 5. Cos would be adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan is opposite over adjacent. Now there's two common ways to remember these ratios I'm going to show you below. The first one that I use at my class is a phrase called SOHCAHTOA. So it's SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. So that's the phrase. So the way I try to explain to my students to remember it is sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cos is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan is opposite over adjacent. So that's one symbol or one way you could try to remember those letters. If you want to draw this, you could put a line between to split them up. That's one way to remember it. So another way to remember the ratios is a little rhyme as follows. Oh hell, another hour of algebra. Now this phrase is very helpful for some students because a lot of students don't actually like algebra, so it's one way that you remember the trigonometric ratios. So we have oh hell for OH, another hour for AH, and of algebra for OA. So there are two memory techniques. You can remember SOHCAHTOA, or you can remember oh hell, another hour of algebra, whichever suits. You just have to remember that it always is sine, cos, tan in that order. If you get those mixed up, then these phrases don't make sense anymore. If you are stuck, if you look at your calculator, it is written on the calculator in order, sine, cos, and tan. So that's one way for you to remember it.